over 72,000 other people who were in Lambeau Field Sunday night that we don't think global warming is such a bad thing. Because if it weren't for global warming, it might have been 20 below there rather than just a little bit below the zero margin, and the game was bad. Today's hearing will focus on the details of a cap-and-trade system. Specifically, the hearing will examine how carbon credits and allowances are to be distributed in a cap-and-trade system. However, I will not be offering much input into this nuanced question because I will oppose a cap-and-trade regulatory regime and oppose it strongly, no matter how credits are distributed within the system. My reason for opposing this mess is simple. From the outset of the Select Committee, I said that I will oppose any legislative effort that will hurt jobs in the economy, and I am convinced that a cap-and-trade system will do just that. One needs look no further than Japan, Italy, and Spain to see what quicksand awaits U.S. ratepayers under a cap-and-trade system. Together, these nations will have to fork over $33 billion to buy carbon credits, according to a November 30th Bloomberg News article. This amounts to a tax on electricity in those countries, since the cost of these credits will probably be hidden in the overall electricity bill. Make no mistake, these costs are the price tag of the Kyoto Treaty. President Bush has received much grief for failing to sign on to that bloated regulatory regime. But after seeing how it is raising electricity costs in Europe and Asia, I am pleased that the President followed my advice and kept the United States out of that bad deal. The question isn't if a cap-and-trade system will raise electric costs. The question is how much they will raise costs. This is a question that I've been asking over and over today and throughout the year as we continue to examine this issue. When this Select Committee conducted a field hearing in Seattle last November, I engaged with New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg on the differences between a cap-and-trade system and a direct tax on carbon. While I disagree with Mayor Bloomberg on the need for a carbon tax, we both agreed that at least a carbon tax is an honest attempt to reduce carbon emissions, whereas a cap-and-trade system simply buries the cost deep within your electric bill. Cap-and-trade's a politician's dream. Doesn't have to vote for the tax and then can run around and criticize the evil electric companies for passing the costs of these credits on to consumers. It's a dishonest way of doing it. At least Mayor Bloomberg said that if we're going to do this type of a taxing system, we ought to do it the honest way. If politicians in Washington believe it's a good idea to use taxes in an effort to fight global warming, then they should show the ratepayers exactly how much they're spending on these so-called global warming solutions. I think most people would find that to be the real inconvenient truth. 10 years ago, when I was chair of the Science Committee, an employee of the Clinton administration testified that the Kyoto Treaty and the cap-and-trade system that was envisioned in that would raise electric rates by 80%. I can't face the senior citizens in my district saying that a procedure that I have advocated costs them that much money. And what's going to happen to manufacturing when the cost of energy here goes up that much, but the cost in China doesn't go up at all? Since 2005, Europe has been under a cap-and-trade system. So far, the results don't look good. Open Europe, a group that studied the system, found that it acted like a wealth transfer mechanism, subsidizing polluters in states making little effort to control carbon emissions while punishing states that had tougher emission allocations. Perhaps the cost of this system would be worth it if they were actually creating measurable improvements to the environment. But as Open Europe notes, this regulatory system has actually led to an increase in emissions from Europe. The American people deserve a technological approach to global warming that improves the environment while protecting the economy. They don't deserve a tax hike that masquerades as a solution.
Sensenbrenner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As I think we all know, there's a great deal of concern about the direction our economy is taking, and the fix is on for a bipartisan economic stimulus package, and the debate is over not whether to stimulate the economy, but how best to do it. And the bottom line is that there will be money pumped into the economy to try to prevent a recession from occurring or worse. Now, I'm a member of Congress, and everybody up here is a member of Congress. How does a member of Congress justify voting to pump money into the economy in an economic stimulus package and then turn around and support a cap-and-trade program which takes money out of the economy and could cost both consumers and businesses billions of dollars? And let me start with you, Mr. Podesta, since your advice is always very good to members of Congress.
Well, Mr. Sensenbrenner, I don't think you need to have that net impact. In fact, I think, as I said, you could create the virtuous cycle of taking money out of the economy that's going towards polluting the atmosphere, creating a worldwide crisis, causing us long-term national security problems that will require us to put more money into defense and other things. Take that money out from the pollution side, put it back in through rebates to low-income people, middle-class people, and investments that will build a long-term economy.
Okay, first of all, we don't need to get into the science, but CO2 is not a pollutant. CO2 is a naturally occurring gas. It's not like sulfur dioxide or something like that. Every time we exhale CO2, and that's not polluting this room.
I never thought I'd say this, but I agree with the Supreme Court and disagree with you, Mr. Sensenbrenner.
Well, Supreme Court's not right all the time either, so...
I agree with that.
Okay, yeah, and well, the thing is, you know, let me continue on this. In 2000, the CBO did a study on cap-and-trade system and determined that the cap-and-trade system would be tremendously regressive. Now, I think that both you and Mr. Greenstein seem to indicate that without tinkering around with the cap-and-trade system, it would be regressive, and without the tinkering around, we end up giving carbon breaks for the rich, using carbon instead of tax in the debate in the vernacular. If we go the tinkering around, which people are debating about, aren't we turning cap-and-trade into a wealth redistribution system? Mr. Greenstein?
Can I answer that? I would say the answer is no. Under a cap-and-trade system, you have a decision. You have to make a decision. You give the permits away for free, you auction them off, you have to make a decision. The CBO report indicates if you have a cap-and-trade system and you give away the permits for free, you have highly regressive effects. If you have a cap-and-trade system and you auction off some substantial share to all of the permits, then whether it's regressive, progressive, or neither of the above, sort of just kind of right in the middle, depends on what you do with the proceeds from those permits that you auction off. But the only way in which it's clearly regressive is if you give away a substantial share of the permits for free, it's clearly going to be regressive because you clearly won't have enough money to offset the regressivity that the increases in consumer prices alone would cause. As long as you auction off a substantial share of the permits, you have the potential to ensure that the system is not regressive. You can make it progressive if you want to. You can simply avoid the regressivity.
But getting back to what Mayor Bloomberg told this committee last November in Seattle, you know, why not be honest? If we're going to increase energy costs to do this, why doesn't Congress directly levy a tax, which is the honest way of doing it, and that way members of Congress have to be accountable for their votes one way or the other, rather than simply folding the cost of this into energy bills and then Congress taking a bow for, quote, giving money away to people that we decide need to get the money from the auction. Isn't Mayor Bloomberg right in saying let's be upfront and honest rather than, you know, going through this tremendously bureaucratic system with all kinds of values of who deserves the money from the auction and who doesn't?
There may be a different set of answers on the panel here. Let me quickly note for starters that your prior question, is it regressive, is it not regressive, the same question applies to a carbon tax. It would all depend on what you did with the proceeds from
Yeah, I'm not for carbon tax either.
Now, as you know, the advantage of a cap and trade is you have a firm cap on emissions, and the disadvantage is you don't know in advance the impact on the price. With the carbon tax, you have certainty on the price, but uncertainty on the exact level of emissions reduction that you get. Many economists, including...
Well, my time is up. You know, Europe has had cap and trade, and the amount of emissions has gone up. So my time is up. Thank you. Europe's failed. Don't need to copy them.